We live in a world where connecting with strangers is easier than ever. Social media, live streams, fan interactions. It all seems harmless, until it isn't. Not all fans just want an autograph. Not all strangers stay online. And sometimes, the person watching you knows a little too much. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 terrifying true stalker stories. Stories that will make you question just how safe you really are. Because in these stories, the stalkers aren't just watching, they're already inside. From a mysterious man who gets closer every night, to a woman who discovers someone has been hiding in her apartment for weeks, to a social media star whose biggest fan becomes her worst nightmare. These stories will make you double-check your locks and rethink who you trust online. So lock your doors, check your surroundings, and whatever you do, don't ignore the signs. And before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because after these stories, you might never feel alone again. Now, let's begin. Story 1. The Man in the Driveway. It started on a Tuesday night. I remember because I had just gotten home late from work, exhausted and irritated after a long shift. I pulled into my driveway, killed the engine, and sighed into the silence. That's when I saw him. A man. Tall, thin, standing at the edge of my driveway, just barely illuminated by the glow of the street lamp. He wasn't doing anything. Just standing there. I froze, my fingers gripping the steering wheel. Was he looking at me? I couldn't tell. His face was in shadow. A dozen rational thoughts ran through my head. Maybe he was a neighbor. Maybe he was lost. Maybe he was just waiting for someone. I sat there for a full minute, waiting for him to move. He didn't. I finally mustered the courage to step out of the car, my keys clenched in my fist. The man didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't react. I swallowed hard and walked briskly to my front door, locking it behind me the second I stepped inside. By the time I peeked through the blinds, he was gone. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. But the next night, he was there. And the next. And the next. Always standing in the same spot at the edge of my driveway, motionless. Never closer, never farther away. I told my friend Mia about it, expecting her to freak out, but she just laughed. "You probably just have a creepy neighbor," she said. "Ignore him, and he'll get bored." So I tried. But every night I still checked. And every night, he was there. Watching. Then, one night, he finally moved. That Friday, I got home late again. It had been raining, and the streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. I pulled into my driveway and held my breath. He wasn't there. For the first time in almost a week, the driveway was empty. Relief washed over me, and I let out a nervous laugh. Maybe Mia was right. Maybe he finally lost interest. I grabbed my bag and stepped out of the car. And then, I saw him. Not at the edge of the driveway. Closer. Standing halfway up my driveway. A full step forward. I froze. This was different. He had never moved before. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I slowly backed toward my front door. My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled with the lock. I glanced back once. He was still there. Still watching. But something was different. His head was tilted. Just slightly. Like he was curious. I slammed the door shut and locked every bolt. That night I barely slept. And in the morning? There were wet footprints leading from my driveway to my front door. I finally did what I should have done from the start. I called the police. 2 officers came by later that day, a man and a woman. They asked me basic questions. Did he threaten you? Did he try to enter your home? Did he say anything? No, no, and no. They exchanged a look. "We'll send a patrol car around at night," the male officer said. "But if he hasn't trespassed or broken any laws, there's not much we can do." Not much they could do. That phrase echoed in my head all day. By evening, I had installed a security camera above my front door, pointed straight at the driveway. That night when I got home, he wasn't there. The relief I felt was immeasurable. I slept through the night for the first time in a week. Then I checked the footage the next morning, and my blood ran cold. I expected to see nothing. But there he was. At 2:43 a.m., the camera picked him up walking onto my driveway. But this time, he walked all the way up to my front door. He stood there for hours. Not knocking. Not trying to get in. Just standing, inches from the door. Then, at 4:12 a.m., he did something that made my stomach twist. He bent down and put his eye against the peephole. For 5 full minutes, he just stared into my house. At 4:17 a.m., he finally turned and walked away. I called the police again. This time, they took it seriously. The officers reviewed the footage, and within hours, they were able to identify the man. His name was Daniel Wright. But here's the part that still makes my skin crawl. Daniel Wright had been dead for 6 months. They showed me a picture of him. Same man. Same clothes. Same face. He had died in a hit-and-run less than a mile from my house. No family. No known address. Just gone. Except he wasn't. And the very last thing the officer said to me? "We don't know how to explain it, but you're not the first person to report seeing him. He always stands in the driveway. And he always gets closer." Story 2. There's someone under my bed. I live alone. That fact is important. I moved into my apartment a year ago, and it was perfect, cozy, safe mine. I had never once felt uneasy there. Not even at night, not even when the wind howled outside my windows. But that changed the night I found the first note. It was sitting on my kitchen counter when I got home from work. A small, folded piece of paper with just 5 words scrawled in shaky handwriting. "I like watching you sleep." My stomach dropped. I checked the locks. Still bolted. The windows? Still shut. I told myself it had to be a joke. Maybe Mia, my best friend, was messing with me. Maybe I had left the door unlocked, and she thought this would be funny. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Because whoever wrote the note had to be inside my apartment to leave it. And I never heard a thing. The next morning, I asked Mia if she had left the note. She swore she didn't. "You probably left your door unlocked," she said, waving it off. "Some creep saw an opportunity and took it. Just be careful." That should have been the end of it. But the notes kept coming. The next night, another one. Left on my bathroom mirror. "You talk in your sleep." I stared at my reflection, chilled to the bone. This wasn't just someone breaking in randomly. This person had been inside my home long enough to hear me sleep. I spent the night with all the lights on, clutching a kitchen knife. By the 4th night, I was on the verge of a breakdown. I had triple-checked the locks before bed, wedged a chair under the doorknob, and even placed my heaviest books in front of the windows. Still, I woke up to a new note. This time, it was on my nightstand. Right next to my pillow. "I like when you wear red." I almost screamed. I hadn't worn red in days. I checked every inch of my apartment. Under the couch. In the cabinets. Behind the shower curtain. Nothing. Then I noticed something off. My bedroom closet door, which I always kept shut, was slightly open. Not enough to be obvious. Just barely. Like someone had been careful. Like someone had been watching me from inside. I didn't check. I ran. I called the cops. When they arrived, I was shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. They searched the entire apartment. No signs of forced entry. No hidden intruder. Nothing. The older officer gave me a look that made my stomach twist. "Ma'am, are you sure you didn't leave these notes yourself?" I wanted to scream. No, I hadn't. I wasn't losing my mind. I could tell they didn't believe me. But before they left, the younger officer hesitated. "Just in case," he said, "check your apartment for crawl spaces. Sometimes older buildings have hidden ones." That idea hadn't even occurred to me. But I wish it had stayed that way. That night I couldn't sleep. The officer's words lingered in my head. Crawl spaces? I had never looked. At 2 a.m., running on pure anxiety, I grabbed a flashlight and started tapping along the walls. I don't know what I was expecting. Then, in my bedroom closet, a hollow sound. My blood ran cold. I pressed against the back panel. It shifted. I nearly collapsed as the panel swung open and revealed a small, dark space. Inside, surrounded by piles of old clothes and trash, was a mattress, a blanket, and a pile of my missing clothes. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. The air was thick with the stench of sweat and something rotting. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking violently, and turned on the flashlight. And then, the blanket shifted. Something moved. And a man crawled out. Filthy. Thin. Eyes wide with hunger. He smiled. Like he had been waiting for me. I ran. I don't even remember grabbing my keys, I just remember sprinting out of my apartment and down the hall, screaming. The police came fast. And when they dragged him out, he just kept laughing. He had been living there for weeks. Watching me. Listening. Leaving me notes while I slept. The last thing he said as they put him in the squad car? I was gonna wait until you noticed me. Story 3. My biggest fan. I've always known that being a YouTuber comes with weird messages. I get the usual. Marry me. You're my favorite person ever. And, of course, the occasional creeps. But for the most part, my fans are amazing. Then, one day, I got a message that stuck with me. It was simple. I know where you live. At first, I laughed it off. Just another troll. I had a P.O. box, used a VPN, never shared personal details. There was no way they actually knew. I ignored it. A mistake. Because a few days later, I got another message. Your blue curtains are nice. But the red ones you had before were better. My stomach dropped. Because I did change my curtains. Last week. And I never mentioned it online. The next week, a package arrived. No return address. Inside? A photo of me. Sleeping. I almost threw up. Someone had been inside my house. I called the police. They took it seriously, checked the house, changed my locks, set up extra security. But there was nothing they could do. It's probably just a prank, the officer said. Call us if something else happens. Something else did. A few nights later, my best friend Mia didn't show up for dinner. I called. No answer. Texted. Nothing. By morning, she was officially missing. The police searched everywhere. No signs of struggle, no break-in, nothing. It was like she vanished. I tried not to think about the messages. About the photo of me sleeping. Then, another package arrived. Inside? Mia's bracelet. The one she never took off. I felt like I was going to die. That night, I went live on YouTube. I wanted to act normal, but I was terrified. Thousands of people were watching. The chat was flooding with messages. I tried to keep up, but then, one message froze me. You look so beautiful tonight. Blue really is your color. I was wearing a blue sweater. I hadn't posted a picture. Hadn't even left my house. My hands were shaking as I ended the stream. Then my phone buzzed. A text. From a number I didn't recognize. Check your closet. I wanted to run. To call the police. But something made me move toward the closet. Slowly, I reached for the handle. And yanked it open. Empty. I let out a shaky breath. Maybe this was just. Then I noticed it. A hole. Small, in the back wall of my closet. A peephole. Looking directly into my bedroom. I collapsed. Someone had been watching me. The next morning, I woke up to an email. It had no subject, no text, just an attachment, a video file. I didn't want to open it. Every part of me screamed not to. But I did. The footage was dark, grainy, shaky, like it was filmed on a phone. Then I saw her. Mia. She was sitting in a dark room, crying, shaking. And then, a hand reached into the frame and grabbed her face. She screamed. The screen went black. I dropped my phone, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Then, another email. Just 4 words. "You're next, beautiful." Smiling face with smiling eyes. I called the police. This time, they took me seriously. They tracked the email, the packages, the messages. And they found him. A guy named Ryan Taylor. A fan. A fan who had been obsessed with me for 2 years. When they raided his apartment, they found a hidden room. Walls covered in photos of me. Recordings of my live streams. And worse. A chair. Chains. A camera. They never found Mia. But they found another video. One from months ago. It showed Ryan sitting in my closet, watching me sleep. For 3 full hours. Stalkers don't just come from horror movies. They don't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes, they sit next to you on the bus, smile at you in the grocery store, or send you a friendly message online. And by the time you realize something's wrong, it's already too late. A man in a driveway that never should have been there, but never really left. A stranger living inside a home, waiting for the perfect moment to show himself. And a fan who wasn't just watching, but planning. Now I have to ask you, which of these stories disturbed you the most? Have you ever had a creepy experience with someone who wouldn't leave you alone? Share your thoughts in the comments, if you dare. And if you love exploring the darkest corners of human nature, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, there are even more terrifying stories out there. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, not everyone watching you has good intentions.